In today's video, we're going to continue on our series covering all 31 NHL teams, recapping their 17-18 season, and looking ahead to the 2018 offseason, discussing what we should expect from these teams to move forward and get better for next season. Today's team we're discussing is the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today we're discussing the Philadelphia Flyers. Now the Flyers didn't have too bad a season, got themselves into the playoffs, unfortunately with a first round exit against the Pittsburgh Penguins, but considering how the year started, I thought the Flyers rebounded pretty well and ended up having a pretty solid season. Now they finished with a record of 42, 26, and 14 for 98 points, put them into third place in the Metro Division. As I mentioned, with a first round matchup against the Penguins, unfortunately they lost that series. This Flyers team had to battle through a lot of adversity throughout the season to finish where they did, and I thought they overcame a lot of things. Obviously they had a lot of goaltending issues. At one point in time they had both their goaltenders out injured. They had a major losing streak early on in the year. So I mean, those are tough things to overcome when you're playing your third, fourth string goaltenders. You're overcoming a major losing streak to still finish that high in the standings. Now they countered that losing streak with a big winning streak. They were a very streaky team during the 17-18 season, this Flyers team was. And when they were healthy and when they were clicking on all cylinders, they were still a very dangerous team, and I think there's a lot to like about the Flyers team moving forward. Now they finished with 249 goals for, which put them in 12th place in the NHL, so pretty solid on the upper half of the league. Goals against, they were 236 against, which 14th, so still they're hovering, just a little bit above the middle of the pack for both goals for and goals against. Their power play was respectable as well at 20.7%, which was 15th, so pretty much the middle of the pack there. But the penalty killing was the one area that they really did not have any strong suits at all. Their penalty killing was really bad all year. They finished with the PK percentage of 75.8 for 29th in the league. Special teams was not a real big advantage for this team. Obviously, their power play was respectable, mediocre, and then the PK being so low certainly gave them a special team disadvantage most nights. So obviously, that's an area of focus moving into next year to try to improve both of those areas. Now let's jump into some of the bright spots for the team this year, and there were certainly enough of them to discuss. They had a lot of players that had some pretty solid seasons. Obviously, Claude Giroux came back with a vengeance and really boosted his numbers, getting back to 34 goals and 68 assists for 102 points. So Giroux was having a tremendous season. Obviously at one point it looked like Giroux was on the decline, and then now he's really picked things back up. So where does he go from here? That's a big question mark. Can he maintain this 100-point level, or is he going to dip back down or regress again? It's really hard to say where Giroux fits in here long term with his production. But either way, it was nice to see him have a tremendous year for the Flyers. Jake Voracek had another solid season, scoring 20 goals and 65 assists for 85 points. So Voracek's been pretty consistent over the years. Sean Couturier was a major bright spot, really took a major leap forward. They obviously allowed him to play more of a first-line center role with Giroux and Voracek for a big chunk of the year, and that really helped boost his offensive numbers and really showed what he was capable of on an offensive standpoint. Obviously, Sean Couturier is also an excellent two-way player. So for the most part in his career, he was more utilized in a second, third line defensive role, more so than a first line scoring role. But he proved this year that when given that opportunity, he could take advantage and put the big numbers up on the board with the big guys here. Couturier ended up with 31 goals and 45 assists for 76 points. So overall, like I said, a really solid season for those top three forwards. Shane Gostisbehere in the back end had an excellent season as well. 13 goals and 52 assists for 65 points. Really, even though he wasn't nominated for the Norris Trophy, I don't think he's too far away from that type of caliber season, and I can certainly see him being in there running for years to come here. He's a tremendous talent on the back end. I thought Ivan Provorov on the back end had an excellent year as well. He put up 17 goals and 24 assists. So, you get your top two horses there between Provorov and Gostisbehere. Really gives you a good foundation on the back end as well. I thought Travis Konechny had a solid year, 24 goals. Even Nolan Patrick, obviously being a high pick, sometimes the expectations are really high. The Flyers seem kind of, reluctant to kind of put him in too big of a role too quick. They're content to ease him in. He put up 13 goals and 17 assists for 30 points. So overall, not a terrible rookie season, and I fully suspect he'll continue to develop and get better year after year here, but he certainly showed a lot of promise and a lot of potential, which was the good bright spot here for this club. Now let's jump into a couple areas that obviously weren't so good. One area that I put under the not so bright spots here as a weakness for the year was Wayne Simmonds, but really we're going to give him a bit of a pass because at the end of the year it was revealed he was battling some injuries for most of the year. I believe it was a shoulder injury, so it's kind of obviously impacted his production. But he dipped down to 24 goals, and obviously you do expect more goals than that out of Wayne Simmonds. But normally, you know, when you're battling injuries, obviously you're not quite the same player. There was some speculation about Simmonds throughout the year that he might have been unhappy or maybe looking for a trade. Or from what I've been researching, I don't really see any of that really having really anything to it. I think Simmonds was battling injury, so if he seemed unhappy, it was probably because he was hurt, not because he wanted to leave Philadelphia. Obviously, they had some guys in their bottom six, like secondary scores, that I didn't think really had tremendous years, and they could certainly use some upgrades. Like I'm talking about players like Dale Weiss, Jiri Lehtera, Valtteri Filppula. Even Raffle wasn't tremendous this year. So some of these guys probably won't be back next year, but they could certainly use a little bit of a boost, I think, in the bottom six just to kind of round out their secondary scoring a little bit. But overall, there wasn't too many things to really say that didn't go too well for the Flyers. But the other one we'll touch on here is goaltending. Goaltending, when they were healthy, weren't as good as they need to be to really take another step forward to be an elite playoff team and really be a cup contender. Their goaltending was okay, but it wasn't great. Brian Elliott and Michael Neuwirth put up decent numbers, but they weren't having tremendous seasons before either of them got hurt. Obviously, they brought in Peter Mrazek, you know, as that emergency call basically late in the year when they were both down. You know, Alex Lyon was up and wasn't really able to, I don't think, to really handle the workload he was given. So they brought in some more experience with Mrazek, and that kind of started off okay, but then it fizzled quickly, which has been the case with Mrazek as of late, and he ended up having not really all that great of stats by the time the season was over. I mean, looking at the goaltending, Neuwirth had a 2.6 goals against average, Elliott was 2.66, and Mrazek was 3.02. So none of them were awesome, but I mean, 2.6 you can kind of live with if you're getting enough scoring, and for a lot of times the Flyers were. But it's something that you'd obviously like to see a bit of an upgrade on. You know, save percentage-wise, Neuwirth was a 915, Elliott was a 909, and Mrazek was an 891. So Mrazek's an RFA. I'm not sure he's going to be back. They'll figure out something for him. They're likely going to bounce back, I would think, with Elliott and Neuwirth for another year. Both don't have a lot of time on their contracts either. But goaltending long-term could be solved by one of their top prospects, Carter Hart. Obviously, he's been waiting in the wings here. He's completed his junior career now, had tremendous numbers. Obviously, the top goalie in junior for the past couple of years, you know, one of the top ones, if not the top one. So, I mean, they have an excellent goalie prospect waiting to come in. I know I've heard Carter Hart say he fully expects to battle for a spot on the big club next year, although I'm not convinced that they're going to rush him. A lot of goalies do take longer to develop, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him have some time in the American Hockey League for a while first before he's given a shot at a full-time gig in the NHL with the Flyers. But you just never know. I mean, obviously Ron Hextall, the general manager, former goaltender, knows a lot about how goalies develop, and we'll see what the path that they choose for Carter Hart. But with Neuwirth and Elliott both under contract for next season, I fully would suspect that they're probably going to have to come back with those guys unless they're able to pull off a trade or something, and then they may have a different tandem for next year. Now, as we've already kind of started talking here a bit about the offseason, and one player I fully suspect to get moved is Peter Mrazek. He's an RFA, so he needs a new deal. You don't need to have Elliott, Neuwirth, Mrazek, Carter Hart, and like Alex Lyon all in the organization. That's way too many goalies, so I would imagine Mrazek's probably going to be dealt away. You know, there's other teams looking for goalies too, so it'd be a good time to do it sooner than later if they expect to get any kind of decent return. But they do have some other guys that need new deals. A lot of them, though, I suspect may not return. If you look at their list of UFA players for this summer, we've got Matt Reed, Valtteri Filppula, Brandon Manning, and Johnny Oduya. Now, at least three out of those four guys probably will not return. I would think Oduya is definitely done. He barely played after they picked him up from Ottawa. Filppula, I'm sure they'll let walk. Reed, it wouldn't surprise me if he's gone too. Manning, I wouldn't be surprised though if they did re-sign him to maybe a shorter term 2-3 year deal or something along those lines. I can see that maybe being a possibility of coming back, but the other three I would suspect more than likely not. As I mentioned, for RFAs, they have Peter Mrazek, so the decision has to be made there, but more than likely I say he gets traded. Defenseman Robert Hagg's an RFA, and forward Taylor Lear as well. I would suspect Hagg and Lear probably both get re-signed to shorter term deals and see what they can develop into here over the coming season or two. But where they're RFAs, they're certainly going to be retained, be qualified, would be my suspicion here, and they will likely only get shorter term deals, would be my guess. Now, they have some other players as well that are eligible for contract extensions, but at the same time, I'm not sure if any of these are really going to come to be. Obviously, some of these guys could be potential buyout candidates as well. Now, the buyout window for teams to complete buyouts on contracts coming up here soon starts on Friday the 15th. goes to the end of the month on June 30th. So if there's going to be any buyouts announced here from the NHL teams, it's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Now, for example, we're looking at a guy like Jiri Lehtera. Now, could Lehtera, with 1 year left, possibly be bought out? You know, it's been something that's been mentioned in speculation. I've heard comments from Ron Hextall that said he wasn't expecting to do that, but you just never know. I guess it depends on what they feel they need to do. I mean, obviously, they're not too tight for cap space unless they decide to make some big moves in free agency. So with the guys that are out there in free agency, like a Tavares or John Carlson, I'm not sure if they're going to kind of get into those waters and try to jump into the mix here. So I certainly think it's a possibility Lehtera could be bought out, but I would suspect that he likely would not be offered an extension. You've also got guys like Jordan Wheel, Michael Raffl are eligible as well, as they're going into the last year of their contracts. Tough to say if they're receiving an extension. I would think that they probably would wait. The team would kind of wait and reevaluate here, see how the season goes, and either look at it either during the season or next offseason as well, depending on how the season goes and how their play goes. I would suspect that they likely wouldn't be offered extensions at this point, but I guess time will tell how General Manager Ron Hextall decides to proceed. So as far as what this team needs going into next year, I would certainly suspect they may try to add a little bit more scoring punch from the bottom six. They have a bunch of expiring contracts of players that they could replace. So, you know, wouldn't be surprised to go shopping for at least a little bit on that aspect of the team. As far as the defense goes, I mean, they do have some spots there, but they could opt to go with youth because they have a pretty good young decor. I mean, obviously you got Shane Gostisbehere and Ivan Provorov, as I mentioned. You still got Andrew McDonald on the contract for a few more years. You know, you've also got Radko Gudas. You've got Haig that's coming up on a new contract as well. Manning, Sanheim, Sammy Morin. I mean, there's enough guys there that they can make up a top 7 or 8 with what they have in the organization already. They may opt to add a little bit of experience for depth or whatnot, but I would suspect that they probably wouldn't be doing too much. My initial thought would be that they're likely going to go with most of the D that they have now. I wouldn't suspect a whole lot of moves. I really think long-term, this team just needs to sort out their goaltending. And like I said, they likely have the answer in Carter Hart, who could be a year or so away, depending on how they decide to proceed with his development. And they still have Elliott and Neuwirth under contract for another year, so I don't suspect to see a lot of shakeup here with this team. Maybe I round out some extra depth on defense or some secondary scoring, but they have a lot of things to like about this team. And another prospect that could jump into the mix next year would be Morgan Frost, who just had a monster year with the Sioux Greyhounds in the Ontario Hockey League. Finished his junior career with a tremendous season. He ended up putting up 112 points in 67 games during the regular season. Then went on a major playoff run and put up another 29 points in 24 games there. So this guy's had a tremendous year, certainly ready to take the next step into the pro game, whether it be in the NHL or the American Hockey League, but they have another top prospect center iceman there. So they have a lot of guys that can play center as well. So some of these guys are going to have to play wing. So see how they develop, or maybe they make a move or two. So the Flyers have lots of cap space, lots of flexibility, but I would suspect that they probably wouldn't want to mortgage the future here too much. So I don't think we're going to see too many big trades, but I could see them maybe dipping into free agency to add some more scoring. You know, a player like, maybe they'll try to get back a guy like James Van Riemsdyk, for example. That's certainly a possibility where he's, you know, provides the type of goals that they'd be looking for. And obviously he's something that they could don't have to trade for, so they don't have to give up those assets to obtain a player like him. And I'm sure that they'll at least inquire with John Tavares, as a lot of teams will, with the necessary cap space to sign him. So could this Flyers team look drastically different next year? I don't think so. I think they're going to see some tinkering and maybe add a free agent or two up front, maybe some depth on the back end, and we'll see how they decide to move ahead with their goaltending. But like I said, I think the answer long-term is Carter Hart, and it's just a matter of waiting for him to be ready to take on that full-time role. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.